IoT was kind of a late introduction, right, into the whole process of clinical trial space. How do you think that has changed the industry?
Nowadays, it's a fantastic challenge for the pharma companies. During the last years, we are seeing a big availability of data, patient data, process data that are huge asset for this industry. And everybody is understanding that, and everybody is trying to get the best out of this asset. As a CROS, what we did during the last years is investing in analytical competencies to support this business in understanding the data. And as an Arithmos, what we did is understanding even better the processes producing this data, trying to map at best the solution fit for purpose for our clients. This is what we actually did during the last years as IoT and the new technology was ramping up. We also invested in startups doing digital transformation, so being expert in digital, where we developed something related to patient centricity and how to collect at best this type of data. So for sure, I believe that IoT is changing the world of clinical trials, bringing us the opportunity to get a lot of data out of the patients. But for sure, we need to be prepared on that.
What would be the key items one needed to focus as you embed IoT into the clinical trials?
We had the opportunity 2 years ago to start actually a clinical trial supported by IoT data. When we started, we realized that the clinical team, the classical team, the standard team was not complete, because we were lacking of what I call a digital manager, somebody able to understand the technology and integrate it into every process of the clinical trial. First of all, this digital manager supported integration of the technology in the design of the study and study tools. The other great experience, in that case, we were prepared. So we were designing it since the beginning. What we did is we involved patient association. We needed to think that these data are coming in any case from the patient, and the patient has a big role in this process. So we use patient association and expert in this to validate the user experience of the tool given to the patient. Expertise of the clinical team, but related to data manager and statisticians. We are treating a huge amount of data. In the past, we were doing analysis with few hundred of patients and with one endpoint per patient, and you were doing classical statistical analysis. Now we're talking of millions of data points, understanding which is the best endpoint to use and how to do a proper estimation to avoid bias of the estimation. And the other thing is privacy, how to treat patient data, locations and all these type of things. You know that in Europe, a couple of years ago, we had the GDPR, so which is quite strong in terms of rules, in terms of compliance for the privacy.
The CRO and what they need to do with IoT versus the PharmaTech.
Sometimes people are saying, well, actually, for the CRO business, nothing is changing, which is partially true, because probably in terms of processes, we don't have a lot of differences. So I don't think you need to redesign a lot of processes. You need to implement probably something, but it's not so big. The big challenge for the CRO is, I believe, modernizing the organization. As I said, so a digital manager, so to have the competencies to understand what, and to design a clinical studies with these components. And this was the big challenge of my CRO at the beginning, because this was something that was important to address and go into the PharmaTech company. And this is something where a system integrator and a PharmaTech company should actually do, understand extremely well all the processes of the clinical trial in order to communicate properly with the team, explain all of the different aspects of the technology, of a choice of one technology versus another technology. For example, for this study, big discussion related to bring your own device and these type of things. Now, when you need to do a risk assessment, understanding the impact of the choice of one technology versus another. And the communication is essential because each party needs to understand extremely well from one side the need and from the other side the impact and the risk that which is associated. The system integrator for sure needs to understand actually an expanded and a wider spectrum of business needs. Also because now clinical trials are getting enriched, okay, due to the possibility of having this technology, are trying to bring the technology and enriching other processes that maybe in the past were not considered in the new way of treating data and the clinical trials. Somebody is asking me why you were owning a CRO and then you built up a PharmaTech company. This is exactly one of the reasons, because I believe that one of the success of the services that we provide is to be able to integrate very well these two components, the service, the clinical services versus the IT services. And communication is essential.
The other side of the equation, the sponsors, right? And the sponsor is the pharma company, right? Let's educate them.
Do you remember when they started using electronic data capture? Everybody was, yes, for sure, we need to go to electronic data capture, we need to use the technology, but they were scared. Everybody was happy, but everybody was scared. I would say the same thing now. So they see the big opportunity, but probably they are even more scared. Our role to relax them, to teach them, and to organize the team back to the digital manager in a way that they feel more relaxed and they understand better.
What's your feel in terms of the regulatory bodies and how they react to it?
I believe that regulatory bodies during the last year are demonstrating that they are open to new processes and risk-based monitoring, all these type of things, and having the technology more impacting the clinical trials. Let's say in this way, using data coming from IoT, if you follow a proper process of computer system validation and you can demonstrate the integrity of the data, I don't think regulators will be against that. Different is regarding how to use this data in order to create a digital endpoint, and that's different. This is where probably regulators are still not ready, probably. But I know that there are already consortium where they are creating a framework on how we should act in a way that we can create a digital endpoint according to IoT data and this type of new data. Probably complex due also to the fact that sometimes the regulators are different opinion is privacy again. Privacy in the States is different with the privacy in Europe. It's not only regulators, it's also the patient. In an event we organized, a patient association, half of their presentation was we want to know what you do with our data. So it's ownership of the data, privacy of this type of data.
What have you had to do about the SOPs, about the processes? What would people need to think about it as they incorporate IoT technology into that?
In terms of SOP, again, we don't have to do too much because we were already prepared to have some kind of e-source data, so integrating data from the outside. I don't think that quality was an issue during the last 2 years, applying the same principle that we have been applying during the last 20 years. I believe that nowadays the pharma are still scared to use the patient devices for such a pivotal studies. So they are happy to invest and give the patient the device, which is in any case a constraint because the patient it will be more difficult for the patient to have two mobiles. And I think that these will probably be sorted in few years. Again, we are talking about pharma companies that the change takes time because of the regulation and all these aspects. You have, in any case, other problems that probably are bigger. For example, the attribution of the data to the patient is in any case at risk, because my daughter can take my mobile and entering some questions, health question related to a clinical study, if I'm not careful. Again, probably my perspective is still related to late phase and not to stringent regulatory framework. Frankly speaking, I believe though that we will get there.
Would you talk about the changing skill sets, right? The skill sets for the people for continuous education, for people who are entering the industry, and
I'm proud to teach to people, and I think that this is something is a giving. Extremely important at the moment that the young people, when they approach this sector, will have a decent platform of skills. With respect to the past, so statisticians need to have a wider spectrum of skills. And for example, I think that data skills and analytics skills will collate. 20 years ago, a statistician was an expert of modeling, prediction modeling, and this type of things. Now they need to know also how to manipulate data, how to manage a database, how to understand this type of things. The same is for clinical people, pharmacists or biologists that were, they were scared about statistics. Now are double scared, because it's not only the statistics, but is the data also, that the quantity of reporting and the reports that you have. They need to understand that. And so I think that analytics and clinical also will collide on the clinical operation roles. For young people and also for existing professionals, I believe that this will be a proper way to complete their skills. Our role is, I believe, to create this webinar, these type of events where we can reduce the distance in terms of skills. Organizationally, Pharma and Zero will change. There will be extra roles. As now, Big Pharma has the chief digital officer. In the clinical trial space, as I said, we will have a digital manager, or call something like this, but supporting the bridging clinical space with the data one.
what is the role of big data and data science, and how is it changing? Has there been strategic changes in the approach to big data?
The role we had in the past is changing dramatically, I would say. From statistician, I believe we will need data scientists to understand correlation and trend and everything coming from big data and IoT. And an example is SaaS. SaaS at the moment is in a challenging situation. They have strong competitors close to them, and pharma companies are looking seriously into R, Spotfire, Python. So those instruments that are more related to big data. And so again, so these competencies need to be part of the new role and of the statistician and the data scientist being able to use properly this data.
What do you think, how do you think, is there any impact of COVID on the things like IoT devices or use of that?
COVID-19 is a huge problem at the moment, but I believe it's a huge opportunity. Also, I believe that the way that we work at the moment, we were working in the past, will dramatically change. And I am supportive of a definition called G-local, global local, thinking globally and acting locally, allowing us to have a global strategy and a global mindset, but at the same time taking into account the local events and being close to the patient, where the geography of the patient. And actually also in terms of our industry colleagues. We saw that we had to work remotely in a few days. Everything changed, and pharma were completely opposed to that, I would say. There will be a lot of focus on decentralized clinical trials.